Thanks for joining us, Jamal. So, could you help us understand your role at ID Logistics? A little bit about who you are, your role, and what you're focused on today?
My name's Jamaal Franklin. I work with ID Logistics. I've been working with them for the past 10 years. I am the operations manager. I oversee the operations of the building and make sure everything's running smooth, but also part of the team of innovations. We got a few things, including one track. We have other things too, but this is one of our bright spots in our newest stuff we've added to our building. And with that said, a lot of our other sites are looking into also adding one track to their facility as well. So it's been great.
Awesome. So, I can imagine there's probably been a lot of change in the industry over that time. What's been the biggest change you've seen in the industry, let's say in the past 5 years or so, that's made your life more challenging?
Well, obviously with COVID and like that changed a lot of stuff. So just on the standpoint of that alone, retaining people, good people, and holding people accountable, which One Track helps with, so we can keep the good people who want to stay here and work is like, beneficial. So we've got better numbers with One Track and better visibility overall of what we want from our associates and what the customer wants as well. But in terms of which things are changing, it seems like it's like a lot less work, but not really. It's just a different take on how the business was run prior to COVID. I don't want to relive that again because at one point, I remember one day we had about 25 people call off, and I don't want to go back to those days. But with One Track and dealing with things and seeing things that our system don't see and captures has been super beneficial, and that's why a lot of our other facilities are looking into also jumping on board with One Track.
What's what one myth or one commonly held belief that you often hear about warehouse operations that you disagree with?
The misconception productivity is always number one. Getting stuff out the door, getting stuff in the door is always going to be number one priority, and it's not. It's always going to be safety, number one. I believe every facility should be like that because one thing we preach to our team is the way they come in is how we want them to go home. And like I said, with One Track and seeing stuff that people think they were getting away with before and not now is a clear sign that we're going in the right direction and making this place safer.
You just mentioned about seeing things that people used to get away with. So, how do you think more visibility in general helps you as an operations leader?
I don't want people to get hurt. Prior to One Track, we had a lot of findings of and stuff. Like obviously nothing was capturing it. Yeah, and with One Track, we are seeing that now. Who's doing it, and nobody's pretty much hitting nothing anymore. Also, with cell phones being on the dock is one of our biggest pet peeves. Just because we have some incidents in other facilities where people have lost their lives over a cell phone because they got a message. So stuff like that is exactly what I'm talking about because I don't want to go to anybody's family saying this person has passed away because of a message on their cell phone. So with that being said, capturing that within those first couple months of having One Track, we caught a lot of things right away, which helped get rid of some people. I hate to say it that way, but it is what it is. And some of those were veterans. So they should know better and we hold them to the utmost standards. We want the best people here, people who want to work and want to do their due diligence to make sure not only themselves are safe, but their coworkers as well.
Yeah, we hear that a lot. I think I was talking to another ops manager, another customer of ours, and they mentioned that if everyone followed the standard operating procedures and processes, the building would basically run itself. It's when people
Correct.
don't follow those processes, that's when everything goes wrong. And I think that's with cell phone usage or not reporting
Mm-hmm.
incidents that things can really go bad very quickly. And I think most associates do their job well and want to perform
Yeah.
safely, want to be productive, want high quality. It's the few that think they can kind of skirt the rules that,
Yeah.
that visibility and accountability really helps.
Correct. I mean, you could take one or two people and they could give the whole operation a bad name, and that's something we don't want. So I absolutely agree.
So speaking of that, you've brought up safety culture being number one for you. What are some specific things that either you found with One Track or programs you put in place aside from One Track that have helped increase that accountability, helped you coach people? What are some of those behaviors that you're seeing?
On the safety front, how people are driving, because some people are good, very aggressive speed, especially going around corners, stopping at stop signs. So obviously we have that everywhere, all over the warehouse, especially in between racks. You never know, because the one thing we always teach them, just because you don't hear a forklift doesn't mean somebody's walking on foot. Obviously, you're not going to hear them. You're not going to hear them beep. So, to keep your head on the swivel, you always got to be aware of your surroundings. I like to always use the analogy of a lot of my guys like playing Call of Duty. And one of the biggest things about video games, situational awareness, right? You got to know where you're at, what's around you, understand your environment and what can cause any kind of harmful physical injury or even damage to product. I always say just because we're in a warehouse doesn't mean you shouldn't drive like you're not on the road outside the warehouse. Same rules in terms of under the influence, being tired, any little thing that can possibly make you not operate at 100%.
Have you found anything where without really seeing and knowing what's going on, an operator would have been terminated, but because you saw what was happening, you were able to have a conversation, coach that operator, maybe get a different viewpoint on something, and that operator wasn't actually terminated, but a different corrective action course was taken?
Yeah, I know we have a lot of people that come from different buildings, and one of our policies is, especially with sit down operators, we always tell them to drive backwards just because you never know. With the forks extended out, you got to come out a lot farther out of an aisle to have visibility who's walking or who's coming. So we had them going backwards, but we had a incident where this person didn't. They were pushing between 2 and 6 pallets going forward. They were completely blind. And obviously, I know some warehouses allow that, but not us. And for that reason, that person ended up hitting the pole, which obviously damaged products, damaged the forklift. So it was our lessons why we have this in place. You can't see in front of you if you have something blocking your view. So that was a learning opportunity for a lot of people who haven't experienced that before.
Yeah, absolutely. So shifting gears a little bit, but the stories from or the claims from damages and shipments and delivery locations either saying that they got damaged product or maybe they were supposed to get 20 pallets and they only got 19. So
Correct.
could you tell us a little bit about maybe one of those specific instances where maybe the delivery location said that they didn't get all the product that they got, but you were able to actually show them that you
Yeah.
did? Like, what was the outcome of that?
I'm glad you brought that up because this was one of our international loads that went out. I went to India and they said that they didn't receive X amount of cases or pallets of a certain item going off their pictures. And I'm very good at investigating. It don't take me long to realize things because I know how my team works. I know how we build pallets. So when they said this and they showed the picture from their site in India saying they didn't receive this in this pallet, but I showed them on the paperwork, like this is how the pallet should have been. Nothing was cut, nothing was left off. So obviously everything is shipped correctly. And I also proved with one track as a visual with our front facing cameras on the loading trucks that these pallets were on there. So once we lock up the trailer, it's out of our hands. So between where it shipped out of here and where it went to India, something obviously got missed. But we did prove with One Track's help that we shipped out everything correctly. So that's a great example. Thanks to One Track. Without that, I would have been having a claim of reimbursement.
And is that something that used to happen frequently, whether it was just this specific location or in general? Is that something that you
Yeah,
dealt with a lot?
a lot. Yes, a lot. I mean, a lot of times I could usually kind of prove it, but especially with international loads, we take pictures anyway, but not for every single pallet. It's just making my job easier and explaining and showing people like we did our part. That's been a blessing.
So recently, we've stepped into the productivity and AI labor management side of things with ID Logistics. How has that been going? Anything that's helped with productivity in the building with this new functionality?
Yeah, in the past few weeks, we've noticed that which we couldn't capture before, because obviously we don't have something that captures idle time, right? We noticed that a lot of people are wasting time and they would do their numbers, but they're sitting here around talking to people for a half hour. But now we're catching that, see that idle time. We added, like you said, the productivity where we went from X amount of cases or pallets per hour to rate per hour now. So before we was all negative. A lot of my workers were negative in their productivity, but now with the switch to rates per hour, everybody's positive. So that's been helping a lot, especially with trying to work and present to my company an incentive program of people who are over 100% to get extra money and not rely on overtime to get extra money. I told my IT this is something we can use as a tool to make sure my guys get a couple of extra more dollars in their paycheck.
Yeah, I think that's a really important aspect of, I mean, regardless of just one track, but any tool that can give you more visibility into operations, it shouldn't just be like a gotcha tool. It should be something that you can have positive reinforcement and accountability. So both ends of that spectrum, right? If people are performing well, you want to give them kudos for it because before, and correct me if I'm wrong, but before you would just have to look into a spreadsheet or maybe a labor management system and just see kind of that static number. And now you can get a little more context into what's actually happening and either correct something or give people props when props is due.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Because doing that before it took up a lot of our time, it took up a lot of my time. So with One Track, gives a lot of time back to me, a lot less investigation and trying to figure out certain things like idle time and who's doing what. We just have a better insight on what everybody's doing exactly. Like you said, it doesn't need to be negative. Something's just positive. We found out this week a way to catch cheaters, people who cheat in the system. We don't want that, obviously, with the program of advising to get these guys more money. I don't want cheaters. We want people to do it correctly and don't take shortcuts. That's one of our biggest things too, not to take a shortcut, because shortcuts could lead to other bad things just because you did one wrong move. Like, great example, we had a safety call with the company, and unfortunately, one of our guys in a different building ended up hitting somebody because he was trying to be fast, and they don't have one track. But it wasn't caught on camera, but it was visually saw that he ended up hitting somebody. So just because it's a faster way of doing it doesn't mean it's a safe way to do it. And like I said, with one track, it helps us see those people who are taking shortcuts and doing other things they shouldn't be doing.
So when it comes to culture in the building, and you talked about it, where the people who want to be there and want to be good workers are the ones there now. How do you think that's kind of evolved over time? You've been working with One Track for about a year now. I think you've done a lot of great work, both prior to One Track and now since One Track's come in the building. What are some of those key things that you're doing to help improve that culture, improve that safety focus, and keep people accountable to processes?
It's more of just coaching of them understanding not only is this going to make you a better associate and a better worker, but it's going to also make you more safe, especially with the self-coaching we have now. That's helped them know where they're at. There are a couple of things behind the scenes we're going to be adding pretty soon. So that's something that the associates will love, because one of the things they asked me the other day is there a way for One Track to tell us where we're at? That's something they are looking forward to, so they don't have to run to their supervisor to figure out what numbers they're at, or wait for somebody to print out a copy of what they're doing for the day. So they love that part.
Last time we spoke, you said the fleet utilization and equipment usage reports
Mm-hmm.
were some of your favorites. Have you found any instances where you've either been able to allocate resources a little more effectively or differently based on what those utilization reports were telling you?
Absolutely, because with certain equipment not being used, even though they're in house, obviously that's wasted opportunity to do more jobs. So that gave me opportunity to have more overtime for people for other shifts to come in and help out, especially with our busy season right now. We're in snack season, so we get pretty busy around summertime. Everybody wants their potato chips for their barbecues and everything. So we get pretty busy, and allows me to get back to the customer and raise our capacity to what they're looking for, so we can meet their requirements to get everything out the door.
That's great. It's something I hear from a lot of buildings, is that the utilization aspect is so huge, because you can either right size your fleet or, like you mentioned, adjust resources and bring in other people who want and need that overtime to get the most out of the building, especially around busy seasons.
And also, just to add to that, it also lets me see that my guys are picking way above what we have in place. So I'm in the middle of maybe adjusting those numbers higher, because they're doing so well that I can go back to the customer and say, now we was doing this before, now I could do an extra 10,000 cases a day.
It's a pretty good problem to have.
Yep. Yeah.
On a less serious topic from safety and productivity, Jamaal, I heard you're a big movie buff and you've been known
I am.
to review movies, which is super cool. Love that.
Yeah.
Huge movie guy myself. Wondering, which actor would you cast to play yourself in a movie about your life?
Honestly, man, unfortunately, he passed away, and that's Chadwick Boseman. He was a great actor. It's funny because I just had my nephew watch the last Black Panther movie, which obviously he wasn't in, but I teared up again just watching that movie, just knowing that what he did, just without anybody knowing this whole time. You watch all these movies, he had the cancer, and yeah, it would have been him.
I know that was incredible, the way he kept that to himself and just
Yeah,
kept on, and that was really inspiring.
super humble, super humble.
In that same vein, if you had to pick a movie title to describe your job as operations manager, what would that be?
Oh man, that's a hard one. It's hard because some days, you have great days, and some days you have terrible days, but you overcome it, right? So I would say never give up. That would be the title.
There it is. Perfect.
Yep.